Kia ora and
Konnichiwa from Video Drones. Welcome back, or if it's your first time here, welcome. Today we are going to talk about 5 films that are in the horror crime genre of the amazing Kiyoshi Kurosawa, who we consider to be one of the greatest living directors.
Now, he's not related to Akira Kurosawa.
No.
He was born in 1955, criminally underrated in the Western world. Thank God he's quite well known in Japan. He's quite prolific as well, which I've found out recently is really because in Japan, if apparently you don't make one film per year, you kind of vanish and fade away. So you've got to keep up the momentum. And apparently also, if you are a writer-director, you have even less luck of getting things made, because adaptations are very, very famous, or common.
That's what people do, adaptations. Because he is a writer-director. It's crazy to think that you have to be forced to push out one film a year, and the amount of work that he puts into his films, how perfect they are. It makes me think he just works constantly, constantly.
He's a very different type of prolific director to someone like Woody Allen, who pumps out these kind of mindless films each year, or even twice a year sometimes. His films are very visually crafted, beautiful films.
Very complex in terms of cinematography and editing and sound.
Experimentation. Just formal experimentation as well.
It's imagine like Tarkovsky would have to make one movie a year. Can you imagine? Like
he wouldn't have.
It's crazy. I don't know how he managed to get such fantastic films together with these relentless schedule of one film a year. That's just nuts. And I can only imagine what he would do if he was completely able to do all his own writing. I mean, he does write the adaptations, I suppose, to some degree.
Yeah, he does the scenarios.
Yeah, that's.
He's obviously less of a perfectionist than someone like Tarkovsky.
Well, maybe he would be if he was allowed to be. But if you've only got
maybe, but then it would be a pity, because it's great that we get so many of his films, and they're still such high quality, all of them, really.
Yes.
He actually began in the early mid-80s making what are called pink films, which is a genre of Japanese sort of erotic soft porn films. I actually haven't seen any of those films of his, but I'd be quite curious to. I know that I've read that he was very influenced by Jean-Luc Godard in his early films in the 80s. So that's another thing that I haven't really seen, those early ones. I'm really only familiar with his films from, say, Cure onwards, which is what most Western people are familiar with, really.
Boy, Cure is a good film.
It's so good.
I can't believe it's 97, I think, when it was made, and I just can't believe it. It looks so good. It looks like it could have been made yesterday. It's just fantastic.
I was just saying to Hannah before it came out, like the year after Seven, which kind of makes a lot of sense, seeing as the narrative is quite similar to Seven. Although he said that he actually based that on Richard Fleischer's The Boston Strangler, which is I've seen once before, but I can't really remember it, apart from the split screen effects, which are very similar to Brian De Palma's
really looking forward to seeing that.
Yeah, he programmed them together in a retrospective of his work, where he got to kind of choose other films that he was really influenced by and put them next to the films that they influenced most. Yes, and he moved to America in the early 90s because he won a scholarship to study at the Sundance Institute, which would have been great because he's so influenced by American directors. People like Don Siegel, Sam Peckinpah, Robert Aldrich, and Richard Fleischer, who I just mentioned before, and Tobe Hooper, who's probably the one that he mentions the most in interviews. I'm not a huge fan of those directors. They're really 60s directors or early 70s directors. Some of them are sort of more 50s noir directors, like Robert Aldrich, who I really, really love. That film he did, Kiss Me Deadly, was so good. But yeah, they have maybe I'm just a snob as far as the visuals go. They all just seem very sort of early 70s.
You hate that look.
Well, I thought you did as well.
The only exception really is anything Cronenberg does. I can sort of overlook the 70s.
I don't like the look of his early films, but I mean, you know, there are films that I do love, like some of my favorite films from that era, like Chinatown and The Exorcist,
Yeah.
for example.
But the look of The Exorcist is quite like, ugh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just the clothes and the decor.
It is, but it sort of suits how sort of drab the story is as well.
I can't imagine it anywhere else.
Yeah.
And then of course Chinatown's set in anher era, so it looks,
in the 30s.
doesn't look 70s at all.
But it sort of it does have that 70s look, but it suits the sort of sepia-ness of the 30s, which we sort of associate with the 30s. But yeah, so he's made a lot of his films in a number of different genres, like crime films, gangster, yakuza films, drama, family dramas, which is very influenced by Yasujiro Ozu, who's one of his favorite directors.
I could see a little of Ozu in his work for sure. Yeah.
Even the way he uses the camera sort of frames things. There's a film we need to watch called Tokyo Sonata, which is a sort of family drama of his, which I've just been reading was actually very influenced by A History of Violence. Although it's less of a violent film, but just the sort of unraveling of the family is quite similar, apparently.
Oh, I like that.
I've seen it before and it was very good, but it's been quite a few years since I saw it. But yeah, of course, he's most known for... he also made some sci-fi films and some mystery, suspense, sort of thriller films, which are very influenced by Hitchcock. He names him as one of his biggest influences, especially in how they both meticulously plan their films. Something which a lot of other directors couldn't stand doing. I know Jim Jarmusch said that would be so painfully boring, just planning everything beforehand and then turning up to shoot it and everything's worked out. But yeah, it works for Kiyoshi Kurosawa, and his films don't feel, or like they feel quite loose and quite natural, organic, which is hard to do if you've planned everything out like that. I feel like he's probably the kind of director who, even if he does meticulously plan everything out, like he says, he is open to experimenting on the day as well. Like if he sees something, he'd probably be open to it. I mean, some of the things that he does in Retribution, for example, seem like, you know, only something you could have figured out on the day. He's most known for his horror films, which he's done 8. I mean, I guess it's not that simple. You can't really say they're just horror films. They're always a bit of something else, like Cure.
Mystery, crime.
Yeah, Cure is sort of a crime horror drama film, really. It's one of Scorsese's favorite horror films, and Bong Joon-ho as well. He's listed it on his
got good taste.
top 10 favorite films of all time.
Good.
One thing that I found really curious is that he's been nicknamed the Cronenberg of Japan.
I don't see that at all. Strange.
Stylistically, it doesn't seem to make much sense.
And he doesn't do any real body horror.
No, it's strange.
That's weird.
But their films are...
I'd call him the Tarkovsky of Japan.
Well, I've just got this thing written down here, and I say that, but their films are, of course, both incredibly idiosyncratic, and they are most known for horror films, even though they've done other genres. And they both also find it hard getting funding for their projects.
Yeah.
But I still find it a very lazy description.
Yeah,
and
like comparing him to Kubrick, I was like,
yeah.
What are you talking about? I don't see Kubrick at all.
I disagree.
At all. Maybe the slow sort of pulling in and out of the camera, but I mean, that's about it. I don't see it.
It's really the long takes maybe in Kubrick, and the slow pacing and the theme of technology fucking with us, like in Pulse and in 2001, but that's reaching. Really.
Yeah, I think it's reaching. I think a lot of people use slower pacing.
But yeah, I would have called him the Tarkovskian horror maestro of Japan, not the Cronenberg.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah,
that's quite strange.
And considering how much like Tarkovsky is my favorite director, so finding, I mean, and Japanese cinema is also one of my absolute favorite out of all the foreign films that I've seen. There's just something I particularly adore about Japanese and Korean, but mainly Japanese filmmaking. Same. So the fact that there's this guy known for his horror, who makes the most exquisitely gorgeous films. It's just such a treat. It is such a treat. Every single one of his films, I'm obsessed with them.
He's not just a typical sort of genre horror director like Takashi Shimizu, who did The Grudge, or Hideo Nakata, who did Ring. And I really love those films as well. But his films are, there's something else. There's a lot of other things going on in them.
And the risks he takes with his shots and his editing and the music, and he does these things like Tarkovsky will do things and you just don't understand how.
Illusions. Just like, what the fuck?
Like magic.
Yeah, we've been rewinding scenes a lot when we've been
over
watching
and over,
films.
and we just don't get it. We don't understand. It's incredible.
Even things like in the background behind the foreground action, there might be dripping things or things to do with light and stuff like that, which is, they've obviously planned that very thoroughly, but it's just
little things that they don't even pay attention to. Like there is a scene, I think it was in Creepy maybe, or Retribution, and there's, the characters are in an office and they're speaking, but behind the office you can see all the lights swinging, and clearly I guess it's meant to suggest that there's just been an earthquake, because there are a lot of earthquakes in Japan. They pop up a lot in his films. But I just thought there's no sort of nod to it, and how tricky it would have been to set up all those things swinging just right.
They would have had to get everyone in the room to push the lights,
but then go about their business like we're just normal people in an office. And I just thought little details like that just make me swoon. I think it's just stunning.
So he's made, like I said, 8 horror films. Some of them are, like I said, a bit slightly other genres as well. There's Kiyoahi Kurosawa, which is more of a drama mystery with horror overtones.
It's an interesting one.
But some of the shots seems like something straight out of his other horror films.
Definitely.
Darkened rooms with a character in red sort of lurking in the background. And then there's, and also very interesting, that's considered a semi-sequel to Kiyoahi, which is very strange.
Well, it's the same actor.
Same actor, and he's a police detective as well, isn't he? Is he a detective?
Yeah. He uses a lot of detectives, and the same actor who's amazing. His name is Yoji Yakusho, and he is in a lot of his films.
He's a very important part of his universe.
I'm just trying to think about Charisma being a sequel to Cure. It kind of explains the way that he's acting the main character, because he's quite strange. He's sort of stumbling around in a forest, and he comes against someone who's like long dead and has been hanging there, and he just laughs.
Well, the experience of his character and Cure seemed to really mess with his head. So, so that maybe that's where Charisma begins,
Well, actually, in Cure he kind of becomes something else as well. So it's interesting, because in Charisma he kind of just runs away from his job. I don't see how it could be a sequel, actually, unless it was I don't know who his character could be, but it's kind of interesting because he sort of tries to remove himself from his family, from his job, but he ends up becoming completely entangled in all these different people who have very different ideas about things, and there's a lot of conflict in that film in that regard, and there's a lot of ambiguity, and you're not quite sure who to believe. It's really cool. Sorry for interrupting.
No.
I was just processing that. I'm like, hang on, wait, what?
Feel free to interrupt. Kiyoahi Kurosawa, Pulse, Retribution, and Creepy, they're the ones that we're going to be covering today. Maybe mentioning a couple of the other ones as well, but mainly the horror ones we'll talk about.
Yeah, this is just kind of an introduction to his work, because the first film of his that I saw was Pulse, and I just couldn't get over it, and then I've sort of slowly caught up with the other ones, and I've only seen one of his dramas, which was At the Ends of the Earth, I believe, and it just revealed to me this drama. It's a drama, it's not a horror at all, and I haven't seen any of his sci-fi, so I'll probably do another video about those kind of films. But it was so different from his other films in that it didn't have a lot of experimental sort of edits or cinematography, but I was so drawn in. And I like dramas, but they have to be pretty good. And I was so blown away by that film, and I just fell in love with it as well. And I thought, I know that I'm going to love every single one of his films. There's just something so special about his films, whether they be, horror that I really, I love the horror genre, but even his dramas are just, there's something so compelling about them. There's that same slow pacing, but I'm completely engrossed. I don't know how he does it. And he works with such talented people as well. All of his actors are just incredible. He just gets astounding
I've never seen a bad performance in one of his films. I've never seen a bad film of his, and I've watched nearly all of them.
Yeah, you're like, I need to get onto that. So
Mm.
there's a lot of it's exciting that
forward
there's
to
so
watching
many.
more. Yeah, it
It's
is.
exciting actually.
It is. And that actor Yakusho, he's very well known in Japan, like Kiyoshi Kurosawa, which is great. So, I mean, so he should be. But he's appeared in films like Babel and 13 Assassins, Harakiri, The Eel, which won a prize at Cannes Film Festival. Yeah, really good director who made that film.
I like
need
eels.
to watch some of his stuff.
They're such cool creatures.
You do. I'm a bit scared of them.
I love them. I pet them.
Memoirs of a Geisha,
Geisha?
and he's currently working on an untitled Wim Wenders film.
Ooh, it could be good.
Yeah.
Film is sometimes very good.
And Kurosawa says that he generally casts Koji Yakusho in central roles because they're both from the same generation and have a similar outlook on life, and that the characters he writes for him remind him of himself. So they're sort of
interesting.
Not the storylines aren't autobiographical, but yeah, there's something in common. Yeah. Because
they're quite flawed characters in a lot of ways. They tend to sort of be quite calm until they have these very dramatic, almost violent outbursts. And actually, I've got to say, like, Kurosawa in general breaks a lot of Japanese social taboos, and that his characters often are struggling with mental illness, or they're very anxious, or they're very depressed, or they're paranoid. And that's something that's not really talked about in Japanese culture, and neither in Korea either, actually. So I think that he's very brave for tackling those kind of issues. And it just makes the whole performances and the story so much more interesting, I think. But that's interesting that he identifies with him as a character, because he's not perfect by any means. And he can be quite unreasonable at times and very emotional, very, very emotional, like pulled around by his emotions, but that kind of makes me like him even more, really, that he's admitting to those kind of darker sides of himself rather than trying to be perfect.
One thing he does have in common with Tarkovsky, sadly actually, considering how Tarkovsky died, is his films have a lot of decaying open spaces, abandoned, often condemned buildings, and places rife with toxins, pestilence, and entropy, which is something that critic Tim Palmer wrote about him.
Makes sense.
And he likes to do things that he hasn't tried previously as a director. I think he said that he gets this from Clint Eastwood, who's always trying new genres as a director.
Though he does have some really commonalities. I'll talk about them. I did like a list of all the things that really pop out as commonalities in his film.
And the Japanese film scholar Hasumi Shigehiko, I don't know how to pronounce the last name actually, is a huge influence on him, and Kurosawa considers him his mentor. He studied a film with him. He's a French film scholar in Japan. He's still alive. He's probably quite old now. But yeah, Kurosawa has said that he wants to bring his teachings to the world.
I want to learn. Thank you.
Do you want to jump into Cure?
Okay, yeah, so we're going to go by chronological order. So Cure was 1997. I will just quickly say the sort of like commonalities that I've noticed in his films. Detectives, quiet women, powerful / scary women, people being held hostage that are totally silent, people seeing terrifying things often that others can't, people jumping off buildings or out of windows, strange bludgeoning scenes with different sort of objects where the victim doesn't cry out, and it doesn't look like it does much damage, but also the harm seems very apparent. Only once have I ever seen even a suggestion of sex, so there's absolutely no kissing. Nudity is extremely rare. In fact, the only time I've seen nudity briefly was in Cure. Men who are very calm and rational, yelling, hitting things and pushing people violently, urban decay, dying nature, tidy, clean houses, detectives with wives, ghosts, people drinking small glasses of beer, water, tea, pots of coffee, abrupt edits, reflections, projections, long coats, dark rooms, ominous sound design, industrial sounds repeating, talking about going on trips or holidays but never following through, which I think is probably very similar to what he has to do with no holidays. Earthquakes, psychology, and corridors. That's something that in all these 5 films I noticed were very common. So in Cure, we've got Yoji Yasuso, who's his main man, playing the detective, Kenichi Takabe, who is trying to figure out who is killing people in quite a precise way. Masato Garawa plays this enigmatic amnesiac called Kunuku Maima. So Maima is kind of the protagonist in this film, but it's very confusing because all of these victims have been found with the same X/wound on them, but they seem to be done by different people. So it's a very fascinating premise. It's actually, it's the only time I've seen Kurosawa show any kind of nudity, and it's actually quite a bloody scene, which is also unusual for him. And there's a peeling off the face scene, just a little glimpse of it, that's really gory as well. So that's really the only gore I've ever seen in any of his films, to that degree. I mean, there's people bleeding a bit, but nothing like that. It's a particularly hypnotic film, and if you watch the film, you go, hypnotic. But it is. It's very mesmerizing, which is kind of some of the big things in this film.
Sort of based on the ideas of Hans Mesmer, apparently.
Hans Mesmer, which is, and you can see the book that Jung wrote sort of in one of the bookshelves. So that one's very much about psychology, abnormal psychology, criminal psychology, which are all things that I'm very interested in as well. It's a fantastic mystery. It's so good, just all the way through. And these unusual techniques that he's using. It's just, I mean, I know it's a perfect film like most of his films, but you won't forget it in a hurry.
It's his most highly rated film, definitely.
Yeah. Should we rate them as we go?
Yep.
I'm giving it 5 out of 5 hearts.
Geez, I'll probably end up giving all of his films.
We're allowed to.
Well, yeah. Let me think. Yes, I'd probably give it... well, I don't really give many films 5, so I'd probably give it more like 4.5.
9.5 hearts out of 10. Aim into that. Is there anything else you'd like to say about it?
No.
The next one is...
You're banging them out.
Sorry,
I'll interrupt if I...
Smashing them out. Well, we've done it, really. Yeah.
I didn't realise that was the review.
Well, some of the ones are a little bit more intense.
Okay.
But I think some of them is quite hard because I don't want to give away any of the story.
Yeah.
I want to give a little bit of a plot, and then some I've talked more extensively about.
We don't need to go into the plot. People can watch them themselves for that, I reckon.
Yeah, I like to give a little bit of an idea, but I don't want to go too far. I definitely don't want to give any spoilers because if you haven't seen these, you don't want any spoils. Charisma's the next one. And
I really like this one. Actually.
Yeah,
it's quite
1999.
different. It's quite different to the other ones.
It
feels a lot more abstract than his other films, and it was it was influenced heavily by a film called The Emperor of the North Pole by Robert Aldrich, who's that director from the 60s that I was mentioning before. Lee Marvin's in that film. I haven't seen it, so I don't really know the themes that they have in common.
It's definitely a little bit harder to figure out what's sort of going on. It's a bit of a different vibe. It's really interesting, quite a spiritual film in a lot of ways, I'd say.
He said he wanted to make it harder to work out what was going on. He said he worked hard to give it more complexity.
He definitely achieved that. It jumps straight into Yoji as Yoro Yabuke, as his main man, and he's talking about a suspect, as in Cure and some other films as well. There's a hostage situation. And after that, he just takes off. He leaves his family, leaves his job, and ends up wandering around in the mountains. And it's kind of all about a tree. And that doesn't sound very interesting, but my God, it's interesting. And he kind of comes across this really crumbling sanatorium in the middle of the forest. Gorgeous. There's these abrupt edits that cut away at these really pivotal moments.
The music will be playing, and then the music also cuts. Like usually in an American film, the music would continue over the cut into the next scene. But that doesn't happen with Kiyoshi, and it's interesting. The effect that it has is to like suddenly make you sort of bolt upright into the next scene, and you pay attention right from the start of the cut.
I think it's almost like too soon, these edits that he does, but I kind of love that about it. And you really got to pay attention to his films. Like, don't watch it if you're just not really feeling like paying attention, because everything counts, everything matters, and the things that you might not notice that are going on around, like sometimes you actually have to, even if you're watching very closely, you're like, hang on, wait, what did I just see? So, I mean, I'd love to see this on the big screen, but it's pretty good to be able to rewind them.
He does say too, in an interview I was just reading, that he really doesn't like the the contemporary culture, how films are being watched at home or on phones or on computers and things. He thinks
totally
that
get the
films,
and the laptops.
Yeah, he says that it's definitely part of his generation, but he hopes that people will watch them in movie theaters, or at least if they're watching it on a computer. It's a bit cute how he said this. I hope that people will keep in mind that they're supposed to be watched on a big screen. He's the politest interviewee that I've ever watched.
Yeah. I do. It's actually been very hard for us to find these, even on video in New Zealand, let alone on the big screen. Which is, it's actually, and even just find them online, it's really,
criminal,
really hard. So that is very sad. But I've got a really big television, pretty good sound, so I try to give them like a little bit of, like, I think it's getting closer to what he would hopefully want us to see. But certainly I wish I had better sound, because if I could hear what he was really doing with sound, that would just be unbelievable.
Yeah, the sound design in his films is amazing, and the scores as well.
Yeah, it's funny actually, because we reviewed Men last week, was it? I did not like it. But Garland was trying to do this sort of like, he wanted like mysteries and speculation, but he didn't achieve this. And in all of his films, Kurosawa does this so much better. He has these genuine sort of moments of, well, just genuine mysteries, and those mysteries don't get tied up necessarily. The speculation that you can make is probably very, I found it very interesting to kind of think about and discuss. I mean, he also is a very good example of assuming that the audience is intelligent, and doesn't just assume we are, but he doesn't spell it all out, because he assumes we are intelligent, but not heavy-handed like Garland.
Yeah.
So just Kurosawa, he doesn't dumb himself down for anyone, and he refuses to bow down to simplification or faster pacing. And I think perhaps that's why he's as highly rated as dumb or pseudo-intellectual directors. And that kind of makes me really sad that audiences overwhelmingly want something simple or mysterious that's actually very hairy-handed, or something that's more fast-paced. But it's like, relax, go with the flow with these films. They're so enigmatic and so interesting, they don't need to be really fast. But I do think that, like, a lot of the audiences of today they don't have the attention span on the...
He's definitely, like in the Western world, he is definitely a cinephile's kind of favorite Japanese director. They're aware of him, but he's not at all mainstream, really, apart from Pulse being remade into an awful fucking horror film. People there might know that it's based on a Japanese film that he made, but
don't watch it.
Apart from that,
don't watch it.
A few people know Cure as well, simply from people like Scorsese mentioning it, I guess.
But we really want to spread the word. Everyone, this is just so criminally underrated. I wish more people knew. He also has this own charisma, or how do they say it in Japan? It's charisma. He uses this masterful use of low light and black, and these nighttime shots are incredible. He actually uses a little snippet of a Penderecki score, a sort of eerie chorus of women that works extremely well.
Picked that out.
I just examined it. I was like, I know that, and it was
from Saint Luke Passion.
Yeah, I love me some Penderecki.
So do I. One of my favourite composers.
So amazing.
Lynch has used a lot of his music. In Wild at Heart he did, and Kubrick did as well, actually.
Yeah, he did. With this film, watch carefully, because you think maybe there's a scene you don't think much is happening, but then suddenly a tree will fall over. It'll just fall over.
Lots of trees fall over.
Yeah.
It's a recurring motif.
Or a sign will suddenly crash to the ground, just like this perfect moment, or a suspect will leave the room, but only the trace of a door slowly opening will remain. You can rewatch it, like, how did they even get out? You'll never see the person. He's a master of making things look natural, unstaged, and I have no idea how he does it, especially when it's a tree falling around lots of actors that just doesn't look like it's touching. It's like a big tree. Like, how did they do that without that falling on someone?
And there's this amazing, huge kind of tree in the film that's like, I don't know how they made it.
Like some sort of paper mache, or maybe?
It's so big and it's so unusual looking.
It just pops up out of nowhere. This is really strange, like, almost looks like a bomb exploding in like the background, but I think it's actually a tree spreading, but it's a very weird tree. There's a line in it that I really like. So these guys at the beginning, they just keep planting trees and they keep dying, and they go, what the fuck is with this forest? I really like that line. He's got a lot of really great one-liners throughout his films, lines that kind of sum up what he's trying to say in the film. He loves shadows, projections, and reflections. There's a really cool shot in the film that I particularly was taken with. So there's this woman, and she's bashing a log with a rock. Don't know why, just bashing it. And then it sort of tumbles down the hill. And she pushes it, tumbles down the hill, and you watch it rolling down the hill. But then all of a sudden there's this like flash of the woman's coat as she's sort of skipping past the camera, just in the corner of the shot. And that's it, that's the shot. It's just really interesting. And some of the shots are so gorgeously set up. They're like a photograph. They're just stunning. Like these still figures kind of lounging and shrouded in darkness. And
that film's definitely my favourite cinematography of his.
yeah, it's really interesting.
So all of them are great, but that's,
Yeah, there's this commonality. It's a lot. So when the main character gets his foot stuck in a bear trap, he doesn't do anything or say anything. He just sort of stands with his. Most people, especially in American films, will be screaming, but he doesn't. But yeah, they don't really react to pain and trauma in kind of a muted way, or just not at all, which is quite interesting. They do scream in horror sometimes, though, like, and then those moments are so intense. And another line that I really like from the film is, the will to live and the will to kill are the same. Really interesting themes in this. Really, really interesting. It's kind of about when you introduce a species and that species starts to do harm around to the plants around it. Is that a good or a bad thing?
Yeah.
I don't like introduced species, so I thought a lot of thoughts about this film, and I don't. Pulse is the next one.
Should we rate Charisma?
Oh, so sorry.
It's like a marathon, like a race.
Punch it out. Oh, I didn't like it quite as much as the other ones, but I also really love it.
Yeah, same. I'd probably give it a 3.5.
I'd give it a 4.
Oh, that's very high.
Definitely, at least. Yeah, they're all so good. So 7, is that 7?
7.5.
7.5 out of 10 for that. Anything else?
No.
Pulse, 2001.
Yeah, it's a great film.
So we've got a really amazing young cast. Haruhiko Kato as Rosuke.
I don't never know how to.
Kawashima?
We should say
Rosuke.
apologies for our mispronunciation of names.
Yeah.
We'd love to know how to pronounce them, but we're
I'm going to start learning Japanese, actually.
Yes.
Yeah, I try.
we're hoping to write a book on Kiyoshi Kurosawa.
Yeah, just on the down low. We think it's terrible. There's no.
There's one
but
which looks pretty bad.
It's like an old dad, right? It's weird. Yeah, Rosuke Kawashima is Kumiko, and we've got Michi Kudo, Koyuki is Haruo Kurosawa, Kurume, Arisaka is Junko. I remember Junko because I say that in the film. I love that name, Junko. Sasano, Masha Toshi, Matsuo is Toshio Yabe, and Shinji Takeda is Yoshizaki.
Pretty good. Your pronunciation's pretty good.
It's weird though, because when I'm reading like English, and then I could probably do better if I was just doing Japanese, and then I get into the flow of things, because English is so different, the way that we have our emphasis on words. Yeah. So if I can keep going with it, I'll probably get better. We've got these sort of penderiki, like nerve fraying strings throughout. There is this falling scene that I can tell CGI a mile away, and this is 2001, but there's this falling scene where someone jumps off a building, and I have no idea how they do it. It's absolutely
He's done that.
astounding.
He did that in Retribution as well.
Sure did. I'm like,
crazy.
How did they do that? They couldn't just chuck an actor off, but that's what it looks like he did. No idea. Like, and then there's this incredible, and this is where I completely fell head over heels for his films. There's a woman, I guess she's kind of a ghost, and she's walking really slowly towards this man, and it's like it warps time, because the way that the woman is walking as opposed to the way the man is moving is different.
Yeah.
And he's so scared that his legs aren't even moving, and the way she moves, and like she almost falls, but she doesn't, and I don't know how she didn't actually fall when she does the move she did. I rewatched that so many times, and I was like, right, this guy, I don't know how he does what he does, but he's absolutely amazing. It's a really gorgeous score. These wailing kind of traditional voices, but so modern somehow. It's got the Lynchian level of horror. It's kind of a similar vibe in a way, but the Tarkovsky magic that we just can't describe.
The score is by Takefumi Hakita.
Hakita?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Very good score.
Yeah, so good. And that's another thing. It's really hard to get the scores. Even if you could get it on CD, I could live with that. But it's very, very, very hard to get the scores.
I'd love to.
That makes no sense. Like this.
They're not even on YouTube, and everything's on YouTube. What the fuck is that?
I don't know. Yeah, there's something very wrong with the world when like his films are just in his scores, and it's just so impossible to get a hold of. Don't get it. There's so many eerie sounds in this film. Like I think that the sounds and the eerie level in this film are the highest of all his films. He also uses like some really beautiful classical pieces, and it sounds like almost like Badalamenti at times.
Yeah.
Lovely scenes like the red tape around a door. The idea I think in this is that there's too many souls. Well, there's one of the theories that one of the characters posits is that there's too many souls filling up the afterlife, so some are leaking into our reality. So creepy. And there's a lot about technology and how kind of videos are spreading this kind of plague that kills people, kind of leaves them like shadows of themselves burnt into the walls, a bit like you see in Hiroshima.
I can say something here. He when he programmed this film at this film festival, he chose Tobe Hooper's Life Force as the film that influenced him. That's a vampire film. He almost sees this as a vampire film, in how it sort of stretches death into a state, rather than American films. Deaths are usually very fast and very violent and over a couple of seconds, but he sees this more like not a zombie film, but yeah, like the people in Pulse, they don't just die quickly.
No, they sort of slowly fade away in a way. The death comes quite slowly. Oh, it's a very, very melancholy film, which is, there's a lot of isolation and people that only really have their social media, their laptops to interact with other people. I think The Witch actually took a lot of ideas from Pulse in terms of the sound techniques that he used. The whispering, there's this whispering scene and this woman singing, and I thought, I wonder if The Witch was quite influenced by the sound design of this film. I'm
Robert
pretty sure
Eggers would be a fan, definitely.
Yeah, it's like this film has got what's literally like this spreading dread. It's almost like existential in a way.
His films he's mentioned the existentialism. It's a big part of all of his films.
Oh, no wonder I love his film so much, because I really love
existential dread.
Yes, definitely. But it's sort of manifesting as this sort of curse. It's sort of like what happens to us when we die. Will we be alone? What's the difference between being alone in a room with a laptop and ghosts? It's really, really interesting. It's got this industrial look, which reminded me a lot of Lynch. It's very dark, really, really good use of light. It's extremely melancholic. Basically, the only way you can sort of survive what's happening is to have not only a really intense and dedicated will to live, which, let's face it, a lot of people struggle with in this modern day world, and to find someone to really connect with. So that's a fantastic message, and it's very relatable.
It is a big Japanese horror thing. Technology in Ring, we have the video VHS replication thing, and in The Grudge there's a lot of technology in that as well. It's definitely a big thing in Japanese.
I think Japanese films in general talk better at talking about the environment and issues like that than anyone else. Even in Hayao Miyazaki's films and Studio Ghibli films are all about the environment. So Kurosawa is definitely no exception in that regard. So I think that's all I've got to say about Pulse. I don't want to give too much away. It's just...
I'd probably give it maybe a 4 out of 5.
I'm giving it a 5. It's the film that made me fall in love with him. And I love it. Some people didn't like the ending. I love the ending. I just think it's so good. It's so sad. It's so beautiful. So I'm giving it 5. So 9 out of 10 hearts.
Yeah.
And then now we're moving to Retribution, which might be my
I should
favorite.
say, sorry, I probably love these films just as much as you, but it's like I'm not as passionate with my reviewing system. I'm more like stodgy.
Stodgy.
So yeah.
That's fine, you know.
But I do love these films so much.
It's good that we don't see everything the same way or have the same personality. That would suck. Yeah. So Retribution's 2006. It might be my favorite, actually. It's nuts. So once again, we're meeting a detective who is Koji. Once again, we've got him playing a detective, which is great. And there's this murder that occurs at the very start. A woman in a red dress being drowned in a building site.
Another scene, like, how did they do that? Because she must have had like a funnel with a straw or something, because she was like there for so long. It's
a bit like that scene in Clockwork Orange where Malcolm McDowell's got his head like under the ring. Like, how do they do that? That's making me really uncomfortable.
He said too that he I forget which. Yes, he's a big fan of Claire Denis, who we're going to be reviewing very soon, because we're going to be very lucky to see 2 of her new films in a few weeks.
Yeah, there's a film festival coming to town, so lucky us, we've got some tickets. Very exciting.
But he loves the way that she films water. Apparently, not apparently, I've seen all of her films actually, and she does have a thing with water. And
actually, he does too. I think I might have left it out of the thing list. I had it written down, but I must have skipped it. But he has a thing about water.
Yeah,
that's for sure. That's
so he gets that from her. Well, not sorry, he doesn't get it from her, but he's very influenced by.
He has a big thing with water, all kinds of water. Like actually, in the scene where there's an earthquake and the detective comes back to the scene, and when he's by himself at night, and the puddle of water where the woman was drowned does this weird thing, like almost looks like
sound.
Like sound could have made these sort of waves and ripples.
Bassy tones would have done it, maybe.
But I don't know how they did it, because the sound around them remains kind of the same and it seems consistent, so I don't know how they
It's almost better not to try and think, how did he do that? And because then it kind of ruins the magic of it, you know?
Yeah. And there's a scary, like, inhuman sound. These plastic sheets are billowing. The composer was Kanu Hima.
Yeah, this guy is amazing. He did the anime Monster, which is really, really cool. But the soundtrack is one of the best things about that. So yeah, he's almost, I see him like a Japanese Bernard Herrmann or something.
That's a good comparison. Yeah,
these very sort of noir like strings.
And the cinematographer is Akiko Ashizawa, who also did Creepy, which we're coming up to. Another really cool line from the film, all this creation and destruction, sort of talking about things that are getting built and destroyed and built and destroyed, and it seems like a theme he's very fascinated in. Like, I don't know how he can make a construction site look so interesting and beautiful, but that's part of his magic. The way that everything's just sliced, mid-action, mid-shot, scene, even cuts off the music, so there's these really abrupt edits happening really, really well. There's this, the dude that jumped off the roof, I was like, how the fuck did they do that? He's super also into, and I've noticed this in a lot of his films, probably all his films.
The woman flies off the roof as well.
She jumps off, and I don't know how they did that. It was so intense, so eerie. He has this he often does this, I think probably in all his films. When people are in the cars, the reflections on the car exteriors are very unusual. It's apparently a rear projection technique that
Hitchcock.
Early mid Hitchcock.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, and then there'd be like spirals maybe, or strange landscapes or clouds. It almost looks like they're driving in the clouds, but it's very subtle and it's so cool and so effective. I think he pretty much does it in all his traveling scenes. It's just amazing. So that's something that he does a lot. The spirit in Retribution is something else. Like, she talks without moving her mouth, but the audio is really different from the rest of the audios, but it hasn't been altered or had an effect on it.
It's definitely just recorded really, really close to the mic, like purposely close. It's like quite bracing. It's
so unsettling. It creates a very otherworldly effect, almost like from a different dimension.
Giving me goosebumps just thinking about it.
So
I don't know if you can see them there. No.
Yeah. His ghosts, man, they're the best ghosts, because you don't really like ghosty stuff, but
I love his supernatural themes. Yeah, he's great.
I've never seen a better versions of ghosts. It's got a very devastatingly emotional ending, actually.
It's very sad, this film.
It is sad, and it's similar to Pulse in a way, with what kind of eventually ends up sort of happening, but it's very different once again. Wow, just the sounds that they use, the subtlety of it all. And then like there's this one scene right at the end involving like a bowl of water and a guy and the ghost, and I don't know how they did it. It's absolutely mind-blowing. I just think overall it's like the anger of these ghosts, the attachment. It's just so I'm gonna give that 5 out of 5.
I'll give it a 4.
So 9 out of 10 hearts for Retribution. Might be my favorite. It's just something about
I
it
love
that
it.
just
Yeah.
I
love all these films. The next one we're going to do is the one that I don't like as much, but mainly I'm very visual with my film loving, and this is shot digitally.
Right.
And I just love how how everything he does looks on actual film. So that's the only reason, really. Still a great
I
film.
love it. I love the way it looks, actually. I think this was another one that was a very close contender for my favourite. This is 2016, so it's a much more recent film. And you've got ex-detective and expert in criminal
Did we say
psychology.
the title?
Yeah, it's creepy.
Oh.
Creepy!
I don't know if
It's
we
creepy.
said the title.
It's a good title, actually. It really works. Because we kept saying,
we did.
Oh, this
Fuck,
is so
that's
creepy. And like, it wasn't even in relation to the title. It really gave us the creeps.
Yeah. Mainly that guy, the main character.
Oh, he's so creepy. He's played by Teruyuki Kawaga, and he plays a guy called Nishino, who's a neighbour to the detective. And it's a different detective this time. He's a detective and he's an expert of criminal psychology. It's actually basically the same beginning as Charisma, which is really quite interesting, like very parallel. His name is Takura in the movie. He's played by Hidetoshi Nishijima, and he's great, but it's weird to see someone being a detective that's not his lovely OG. Yeah. And his wife, Yasuko, is played by Yuko Takeuchi, and she is fantastic. What a cast. Quite close to soon to the beginning, we're sort of introduced to Nishino's house, so the neighbours. The scene has this wind that kind of blows through the front yard of Nishino.
Must have been a wind machine, like Tarkovsky's in Nutshell in that way, I think.
Sort of like they've left the property and the camera's really slowly going back, and then this wind starts just in that area. I started to think that he actually does use wind occasionally, and I think wind in his film sort of symbolises something otherworldly and not in a good way. He just very occasionally uses wind. He uses it in Cure as well, just for a little bit, and you think gives it a lot away about what's actually happening to the characters. There's no music until 20 minutes in,
which I love. That it's like it makes you really sit up when it comes in.
Oh, does it ever? That was a very like Hitchcocky and Bernard Herrmann sort of score for that. There's a scene where a train rolls past. There's a woman that they encounter. She walks away, and the train's coming in a similar direction. It really reminded us of Ozu, and of getting a very accurate look at what the suburban life of Japan looks like. Really, really, really good use of drone and wind-like rumbling sounds in that scene as well. One thing that really I can say, sort of I see in all his films, is that he has this elegance. His stuff is so elegant.
Yeah, it really is.
It's just elegant.
Very graceful.
Elegant, graceful, just superb. And 38 minutes in, we suddenly see things from the wife's actual viewpoint, from first-person perspective, how she sees the world when it's been outside of her for the whole film. And it's the neighbour comes into her space in this frightening and repellent way. It's right up in your face. And it feels like he's in your face.
Which in Japanese culture, society, that would not happen, So quite polite people.
Kiwis are quite into our personal space as well. I think sometimes I wonder if that's why we've had slightly easier time with the pandemic, because we kind of like to give each other our personal space. Not everyone. Some people get in my face. It really bugs me. But that's kind of my worst nightmare, is someone really creepy coming really close up. And it's got no music, but just the way that it's shot creates enormous dread. It's such a tense scene. And these shots just being cut off right when there's about to be action. There's something that you think really important is going to happen. It just cuts it off. It's like, no, you don't get to see that, which I love. It teases you and it kind of drives you crazy, but it's part of his brilliance. Really, it works so well. I like not knowing. Because what you're thinking, you're creating your own film. With what's happening in that moment.
He has a lot of respect for the spectator and letting them work things out for themselves, rather than being hammered over the head every few seconds with like grating score like most American films.
Yeah, there's a character called Honda, and she is talking about her mother maybe being controlled by someone in this interview that the detective is giving. Well, he's not really a detective anymore. He's actually like a professor at a university, but he can't help himself. He just can't help himself. He has to get involved with this unsolved mystery. And I wanted to talk about this scene in particular because she's talking about her mother, and then as soon as she starts talking about maybe her mother was being controlled, it looks like the sun's been covered by a cloud in the inside of this building. The lighting changes, but very
Amazing
subtly.
scene.
It just feels like a cloud's gone over the sun.
It's a very long take.
It looks very natural, the lighting, but it's very like it just the whole mood shifts. And then there's
Then it changes back again.
yes, eventually, yeah. It's like he uses sometimes lighting changes instead of audio to sort of give these cues of what's sort of happening, which I really love, that he uses light and editing as well as sound. So the scene, it gets darker and darker and darker, and then this strange industrial sound, almost like a warehouse with metal objects being moved around.
Yeah.
It's getting more and more intense, and then it becomes almost black inside this room.
Yeah.
And the scene becomes very emotionally fraught. Then all of a sudden, it becomes light again, just like that. And the tension is released, and the scene ends. Boy.
That black part of the scene reminded me of some of the shots in Godfather Part 2, where it's like they made it so dark that I think the producers wanted them to reshoot it. It was Gordon Willis. He's considered the Prince of Darkness.
The Prince of Darkness.
So maybe Kiyoshi's a fan of that. Not sure.
Oh, he does. He doesn't just take one or two risks and do one or two things differently. He does everything he can differently. He is genuinely this extremely unique filmmaker. Yeah. I'm in complete awe of everything that he does with his films. He can always do more, and he always does, and it's just stunning. It's just why it will stand up really well to repeat viewings.
It does. They do. I've seen quite a few of his films.
I can't wait.
Over and over.
I usually see like almost everything in a first viewing because I'm very observant. I would have made a good continuity person actually in film, but with his, there's no way you're going to see it all. It'll just keep growing and growing and growing. A bit like Tarkovsky is similar to actually Lynch. But he takes a lot of visual risks. He thinks up a lot of different ways to tell each scene, and he goes all out with that. It's just wonderful. Okay, so the ending of this film. Quickly, there's this really weird syringe-like weapon, and I keep fixating on it.
It is a syringe.
But it's a syringe, but it's like,
old,
it looks like an old syringe. But then again, it's too shiny. It's not antique, because I know my antique syringes.
Do you know literally every syringe?
Well, a lot of the antique ones, but I don't know. I can't explain. It's this really, it almost looks like it's out of a sci-fi. It's a really weird syringe. We have no idea what kind of drug it is, what it does. It has some weird effects on people. And once again, when they're driving in the car, it looks like they're in the clouds. It's crazy. So weird. But the very end is beautiful. It looks so beautiful, but there's this, something happens.
The acting, right?
Yeah, the acting. Yeah, Yasuke, she really shows her acting chops. And I was literally shaking at the end of this, which is not a reaction I'll often have. I definitely had it with The Innocents. That one had me just about having a panic attack, which is great. I love being pushed to that end, but it was so unexpected and so startling, and I actually found very emotional again. So that one really got to me.
Yeah. So brace yourself for the ending.
So brace yourself. It's just... Yeah. It's a very calm film in a lot of ways. I actually
fell asleep during the viewing of it, but I've seen it before, and it had a real effect on me when I saw it the first time.
I was very affected by this film, and I absolutely adore it. So I'm giving it a 5 out of 5.
I'm probably going to give it a 3.5. But that's because of the visuals, really. Everything else is amazing.
It's so good. Yeah. So 8.5 out of 10 hearts. That sounds about right. Well, it could be a bit higher, but yeah. So there's 3 of his films, pretty much. 4 out of 5 of his films I can't help but give 5 out of 5. And I'm really looking forward to seeing more of his work. And please see his films, spread the word, fill up the trivia and IMDb. There's bugger all there. It's really sad.
We should do that.
We're going to start doing that. We're going to start adding trivia. We just don't get, is it racism? Is it ignorance? What is it?
I think it's just that his films aren't that easy to get in America, probably, or in the Western world.
But why not?
I know, exactly. It really is. I feel like he probably is going to become more, like in 50 years, everyone will hopefully know who Kiyoshi Kurosawa is. in the same way that everyone knows now who Akira Kurosawa is. But yeah, there should be a lot more awareness of his filmography, because it's just that amazing films, all of them. We might do another video sometime in the future on his non-horror films, because they're really, really amazing.
I was surprised at how much I enjoyed that one drama that I've seen. I'm really looking forward to seeing what he does with sci-fi.
Yes, he's
like,
done
what? I love sci-fi so much. It's pretty much my second favourite genre.
He's done about 3, 4 maybe sci-fi films. Again, they're not like nothing's black and white with him. They're sort of multi-genre films. There's a comedy sort of sci-fi called Doppelganger, which that's probably the only film of his I haven't seen.
Kiyoshi Kurosawa, you're the freaking man. One of the greatest living directors, easily, in my opinion.
So, so keep an eye out for our book.
Yeah, it'll take us a while. Hopefully we can find a publisher. We better find a publisher.
I was just thinking before, I'd even love to just edit a collection of his interviews, like a Kiyoshi Kurosawa interviews book.
Because there's not a lot of interviews or footage of him talking at all. He seems like he's a very humble, sort of introverted man that's certainly not seeking the spotlight, but we want more. I want to read everything he's ever talked about, or watch every video he's ever done. He even looks a little bit like a Japanese Tarkovsky.
He does,
He's got quite a similar jawline and the facial hair.
But he's not nearly as grumpy and kind of bossy as Tarkovsky was.
He's super polite and just seems so lovely. He's actually, this is a big call too, but out of any director or any actor or anyone in the world of cinema, he's the one person I would really like to meet.
Yeah, he's one of the few. I'd love to meet Claire Denis.
I'd like to meet
Cronenberg as well. Yeah.
But he's the one that I'm like, I get that feeling that I get with Tarkovsky films, which just makes me so emotional that I'm seeing something that is truly, just beyond most cinema, far beyond. There's something magic there. There's something very special that gives me this crazy feeling, this very emotional feeling. And he's the only other director that I feel that way about, really. So tomorrow we've got a big day. We're filming our first video for Moi to Mother.
We are. So we better get some sleep.
We better sleep, make some fake blood.
Yeah.
It's going to be fun.
It is.
Big day tomorrow. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for staying with us. Let us know if you've seen any of his films and which one you like the most. And please, if you see a film because of this, tell us which ones you watched and what you thought of it.
We'll catch you next time.
See you.
Bye.